Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be taking a look inside the Nirvana transmitter. Now I need to take this one apart to convert it to mode 1, so I thought why not make a video and show how to take it apart and see what's inside and what it takes to change the modes around and things like that. So there's actually quite a lot of screws that you have to take out of this thing to get it apart, and they are a combination of 2.5mm hex screws, and we've also got a 1.5mm hex screw here. So we've got two screws down here, and those are the 1.5mm, and then the rest are all combinations of either silver or black 2.5mm screws. So yeah, you also have to remove these grip pads, so those just clip in nicely, and then very carefully I'm going to take this apart. So I should mention actually, this is for the neck strap, and that sits on there like so, and under there, that is where your micro SD card lives. So actually, if you don't use a neck strap, and I don't, it might be worth just keeping this off, because otherwise you cannot get to the micro SD card. Also, you have to take this off if you want to get to the boot button. So the boot button is inside this screw hole, so you know when you are flashing the firmware, then you have to hold that down for it to go into DFU mode. Anyways, I've got all of the screws out here, and you have to be very careful taking this apart because some of the electronics are in the back there, including the little micro UFL for the antenna. So let's take this apart, and I've already done this, so the antenna should come loose already. So you can see there, micro UFL. So this is the back here. Also got a ribbon cable that has to be disconnected from here as well. And we've got a little motor there, you can see, for the haptic feedback. And yeah, this is everything for the module and the switches there. So yeah. And then this is what the back looks like. You see, once these two connections are removed, everything is pretty clean. So what I have got to do, and this is interesting because we have got the circuit boards here for the hall sensors, which is completely different than things like the Tyrannus, because those have hall gimbals, but I think it's still analog, whereas this is digital and digital. So what I have to do is actually remove these sensors here, and those stay in place, so those connect to a UART there, and then I think I just remove these 4 screws of the gimbal and physically just switch them over, and these stay in place. So I'm going to give that a go. So I have some really terrible rubbish screwdrivers, and these screws, they're kind of like self-tapping, and all of my screwdrivers were just destroying the heads on these screws, so be very careful with that. I did find a screwdriver in the end that did the job, but yeah, a little bit annoyed at myself there. So now I'm going to remove the plastic part of the gimbals. So those screws were much easier actually, and then those just lift out. It's actually very easy from this point on, because it's only these that we have to replace onto the other side. Very good quality. So then I'm going to undo the one on the other side, and then those are just going to get flipped around and put back in. So there's no taking out any wiring, no unplugging of anything. You are literally just switching the plastic parts, and then the whole sensors just stay in the same place over the top. I really like that. So if I could go back and say to myself, just use a decent screwdriver, and I wouldn't have had so much of a problem. But yeah, it was a little bit tricky just installing it for me. Okay, just a quick update. I found a half decent screwdriver to do this. Yeah, so yeah, very specific to having a decent screwdriver, so just make sure that you have that before attempting this. Otherwise, yeah, you're gonna ruin the heads like I've done on a couple of these. Alrighty, so I'm plugging back in the ribbon connector there. You have to be very careful doing this, and same with the micro UFL. I wish that was a little bit longer, honestly, because it's a little bit tricky to make sure that it's in place there, and it's very easy to come connected if you just take this thing apart quickly. You have to push down the plastic parts of the transmitter at the bottom first in the battery holder, and then clip the top in. So yeah, a little bit fiddly to get back together, but not too bad. And then we have got all of the screws to go in, so I'm just going to speed that up because, yeah, it's not the easiest transmitter to come apart, but, you know, it's not the most difficult either, you know, so if you follow this guide, I guess you could call it, then you shouldn't have a problem. Yeah, but loads of screws. I guess it does mean that it's a really tight fit and it's a quality feel in the hands, and those are the rubber grips going back on the side there. Those just clip in nicely as well. Okay, so now everything is put back together. I want to just take you through the user interface a little bit, but do take this with a pinch of salt because this is the underground FPV version and they are changing the screens on a daily basis. So yeah, it might not look like this on the finished product. However, I have flown with this and I'll link to that video in the below. So yeah, it's in a usable condition. Now the first thing I want to actually show you is a bit of a tip. Now this cover here, it is really nice. You can just sling it in a bag. So you've got the Crossfire module on there as well, but you do have to be actually a little bit careful when you take it off, and that is because if I just lift this up here, can you see that this clip here actually fits flush on the back? And what can happen, we have got these little protectors here for the USB and the trainer port, and if you're not careful when putting this on, then that bit of plastic can actually rip these off, so be very careful with that. Okay, so I've got two 18650 batteries here, so to turn it on, it's both of these buttons here. So this is full touch screen, of course, and I've got a custom logo here that Underground FPV has made. So I just want to address that because I got quite a few questions on my flight video regarding this. So I mentioned that the Banggoods version is going to be different than the Underground FPV version, and why that is, I can give this official statement. Banggoods didn't work on the firmware for the Dark Knight, and Underground FPV did, and that is why they are going to be different. And when you go to update the firmware, I believe there's going to be a database of the Underground FPV versions and the non-Underground FPV versions, so it'll put Vanilla OpenTX on the non-Underground FPV versions, and then it has a list of hardware serials for the Underground FPV version. So that is the official statement on why they are going to be different. So let's take a look. Now I have got the screen on full brightness here, and it can just be seen in daylight. It could do with being a little bit brighter, but it is fine. So you can see that I've got it set to turn off after a couple of seconds. So we have got our battery level there, we have got the date, which is wrong because I haven't set it. We have got the trimmers, and those are done here on these little up and down sort of joystick kind of things. So if I go into here, so yeah, full touch screen, we've got model select here, so I've just got the one model set up here at the moment. And if we go on there, we've got monitors, so that's all of the stick positions and your switches and things like that. And if we go into there, so we can do statistics. So let's take a look there, and then if we go into about, see, I don't think anything's coming up there either. But we have got the three sections here, so we have got the model, and then we've got the transmitter menu, and then we've got things like widgets. So very similar to OpenTX at the making of this video. So if I go into model here, this just looks like OpenTX. So you've got the model name, I've just called it CRSF because I'm using Crossfire here, and you can see you can use the touch screen to scroll down here, and I can choose the internal RF, which I've got selected as off, but of course this is FlySky based, so you know, you can go into there, and then we have got PWM plus iBus, PWM plus SBus, and then PPM, iBus and SBus, but yeah, I'm not using that at the moment. So we've got Crossfire in there, but we've also got the R9M, we've got the XJT, PPM, and I would imagine that at some point we're going to have multi-module as well. So if we go over here, we've just got our normal setup. Now, something that Underground FPV are talking about is quad mode. I haven't got that installed on here yet, but it's basically going to be a quick setup like a wizard, so it gets all of your switches set up quickly. But yeah, if we go, we've got inputs over here, and then we've got the trying to scroll across at the top there. There we go. So yeah, you can see if I go into here, I've set up my switches. Now, one thing it's not doing at the moment is, so if I go into switches here, if I move the switch, it doesn't automatically select, but they are listed all correctly and match up. So that's something that is different. Maybe because of the touch screen, I don't know, but the making of this video, that's not working. But yeah, we've got absolutely everything across here that you would just have in normal OpenTX, except, you know, it's touchscreen. So then if I go over here, so this is the radio setup. This is where you can set the date and time and your battery voltage range. You know, there's nothing changed there. We've got the haptic options there, and we've got the backlight options, so you can change all of that. And I've got this set to mode 1, so I've changed it because I've converted it to mode 1. Also got the channel map as TAER, just because I'm used to that with the Tyrannus there. So yeah, I've got it set to timeout. Got the SD card there, and just the usual things. And one thing I like about it is when you go and type into something, you get a keyboard, so you don't have to go through every single individual letter like you do with the Tyrannus, for example. This is where you calibrate the sticks here, and you can see them moving across there. And that is pretty much it for now. So yeah, to turn it off, it is just both of those like that, and that is the user interface. Something that I mentioned in the flight video is that the gimbals feel quite loose, and they are loose. Now, you can adjust the tension of the springs, however, even at full tension they are still pretty loose. So what Underground FPV are going to do is provide a spring kit, and you can replace the springs and have them stiffer if you like that. I know a lot of people do prefer loose sticks, but I'm a bit old school. I'm used to old janky transmitters that require a bit of force. I also mentioned in my flight video as well that it seemed really twitchy, and that is just because we have got digital Hall effect here, so there's zero deadband, so any tiny movement that goes on here goes through to the copter. And I've got shaky hands, you know, I get it in the comments all the time. I know I've got shaky hands, so you know, you might have to play around with deadband and your rates a little bit more if you are like me. I guess, you know, it is going to be an adjustment if we want such accuracy out of our transmitters these days. Alrighty, so there is my teardown and overview of the user interface of the Dark Knight Nirvana transmitter from Underground FPV. If you liked this video, then give us a thumbs up, and if you can afford to do so, I'll link to my Patreon in the below, because this is getting ever increasingly difficult to do, so I really appreciate that. And also everyone who has subscribed to Patreon, thank you so much. It is really important. And I will link to this in the below, as well as the flight that I did. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.